Apparently, HBO Max doesn't just want us to spend Christmas watching the Harry Potter series, but also wants us to spend Easter watching documentaries about the Harry Potter series.
That's right. It was announced today that next Sunday, the 5th, the documentary, Searching for Harry, The Art Behind the Magic, will arrive on HBO Max. Basically, it's a documentary. It talks about the behind the scenes, the secrets of the Harry Potter series, the search for the actors, what that process was like, all of that. And a teaser came out. Man, it's really cool. I'm passionate about behind the scenes stuff. I went crazy over this. Well, those of you who have been following me here for a while already know that. I have a huge series here called Magic of Cinema, where I covered all the behind-the-scenes details of the 8 Harry Potter movies. So when I saw this, I was on cloud 9, my friends. I was on cloud 9. Having a documentary before the series even premieres? Don't worry about spoilers. They won't reveal anything that would ruin your experience watching the series. They're not going to show anything you need to know while you're watching. They'll just show basic stuff, things we already know, right? I mean, Harry Potter, after all, it's not a new story, right? We already know the main plot, but seeing the behind the scenes is really cool. I love it, so I'm a bit biased. And of course, I couldn't miss the chance to analyze every little bit of this teaser, because there are some really cool things in it. I'll say right away that I don't think this analysis will be as long as the teaser analysis. I know there were some people who said, Kako, analysis. If it's under 2 hours, I won't watch it. Still, there needs to be real content to discuss. I can't just make things up. So, I know you guys are joking. At least I hope so. But let's go ahead and analyze. I wrote down a few things here to comment on about this teaser. The first shot shows the filming of the scene where Hagrid arrives with the first-year students walking through a forest. This scene is in the teaser, but you notice that in the teaser, it's a scene that's set at night. It's getting dark, right? But as this documentary trailer shows, right, behind the scenes, it was filmed in the morning. This scene was filmed during the day, with daylights. This is a technique that's widely used, known as day for night, or even fake night in Portuguese. And it's simply much easier, requires much less logistics, and is much cheaper. Filming during the day, right? You don't need to pay a night shift differential. You don't need to bring in the security team, because filming at night is a bit more tense, not the same security team you would need for filming during the day. You know, it's not the same thing. Besides that, there's a very important detail. Children can't film at night. Child labor laws are very strict. They can't even stay on set for more than 5 hours, so they really have to film during the day. And this technique is used very well. You saw that the scene turned out really well done. It really looks like they filmed at night. But no, they filmed during the day. The next shot shows John Lithgow, the great Dumbledore from the Harry Potter series. Really great, because he's over 6'3", saying the following. The stories of Harry Potter are an extraordinary phenomenon. Really, John Lithgow, they truly are. It's great that the actors will speak there for the first time in a series-focused production. They'll share things, which will be really cool. In the next scene, the Ravenclaw and Slytherin banners appear. They show up in a very quick shot. There, behind one of Hogwarts' braziers, which is that tray with fire used to light up the place. And notice here, both banners have branches with leaves, once again reinforcing the naturalistic aspect of Hogwarts. The series will have a lot of this naturalistic identity, with lots of trees and nature, symbolizing how those banners, how those houses are like 2 fruits from the same tree. Hogwarts is the tree, and the houses are the fruits, you know? That's really cool. It symbolizes that it's all one thing, all one foundation. The houses have their own characteristics, but without Hogwarts, there are no houses. Without the tree, there is no fruit. It's as if the founders planted a seed when they built Hogwarts, you know? And the banner's visual identity is really cool. It has a very medieval vibe. And look, Ravenclaw. The symbol is an eagle. It's a bronze eagle. An eagle the color of bronze. So, following the colors from the books, not a raven like in the movies. And not silver like in the movies either. There's a silver and blue border, but that seems to be from the lighting, likely from the fire, especially on the edges. It's fine. The eagle is bronze, and we've already seen materials, like in the teaser, showing the scarf will be blue with bronze. The tie also has bronze, so everything is good. There's not much to say about the Slytherin banner, right? It's there with the serpent, as usual, the colors we already know, green and silver. So, the next shot shows the students when they enter Hogwarts for the first time, right? But from a different angle.
In the teaser, we see the finished scene, and here we see the behind the scenes of it being made.
And then, you notice there's a blue screen in the background, right? That's to digitally complete the set, because obviously not everything there is actually built, but it's impressive how much is really constructed. Look at this whole set, man. It's all physically built. A real set. Practical effects will always be much better than digital effects. Than CGI, man, they will always be superior.
And this is something that the Harry Potter movies have already established. The Harry Potter movies used a lot of practical effects.
That was a really great decision by the movies. It makes everything feel much more real, everything much better.
Obviously, I'm not going to villainize digital effects here, no, because they're extremely necessary. One thing goes hand in hand with the other, right?
But it's really cool to see how many practical effects they use. Still in this take, it shows the plants, right? It shows even more of the plants there, climbing up the wall, at the portal where they're going to enter, right? At the doors of Hogwarts. That touch of nature is really cool. I'm really enjoying seeing all of this connected with Hogwarts, because it really gives the impression that the castle is alive. You know, it's alive.
In the books, it's described that Hogwarts always seems to be changing. Doors change places, doors pretend to be doors, staircases disappear. So, it's a living school, you know?
And I think having these plants and things like that gives it this sense of being alive. You can also see that in one of the portals, there on the right, there's a face of, apparently, a man, right? Wouldn't it be cool if those faces could talk? I'm not sure those statues talk, but some gargoyles do, like the ones in the teacher's lounge at Hogwarts. That would be really cool. And still in this shot, you can see the inside part, where there's a little wooden bridge. It's not that stone walkway where there's the welcome banner for first years. It's really a little wooden bridge here, before that walkway. And man, to me, this bridge really looks like a tribute. I don't know, maybe I'm imagining things, but it seems like a tribute to the bridge from the movies.
There, which is a very iconic bridge that was added starting from Prisoner of Azkaban. To me, I see it as a tribute, you know?
And then, the teaser shows this for the first time. We hadn't seen it before. The entrance to the Great Hall, the doors, right? Some parts of the Great Hall, the door to the Great Hall. And we hadn't seen this. We had only seen it in the teaser. The students entering there in that entrance hall, let's call it that, entrance hall, where there are the stairs, there's the walkway, and then, on the left side, right, the door to the Great Hall. But we hadn't seen the door. We had only seen that there was an archway there, right? But we hadn't seen the door itself. This part shows some glimpses of the Great Hall. They're really quick. And then, we see that the door isn't the same one. You know it's the Great Hall door because it's different from the one students use for the entrance hall. It's much darker in color. It has some iron details. While this door is golden, it's really golden. In their scene, you can see Draco coming in. He's right there in front. Right, Draco. He's noticeably taller. The actor, Lox Pratt, is noticeably taller than the other kids. He's 14 years old and he's a tall, skinny kid, so he ends up standing out a bit there. I don't know if that was intentional on the part of the show's directors or producers. Maybe they want Draco to look bigger, to be more intimidating, because he's a bully there, bothering people. But you can definitely see him there, looking up, all amazed by the Great Hall. Now, notice that in the back, where there's a torch, there's a column and a structure. See that? It's a kind of mezzanine. And you can tell that by its location, it's connected to that stone walkway, right from the entrance hall, where there's that banner. Welcome, first years. If you look at the layout, right, take the teaser, look at the layout of that stone walkway, and where it goes, on the wall to the left, that's exactly where the door to the Great Hall is, right?
And then, the students enter the Great Hall there, and there's this mezzanine. That walkway leads to the corridor that goes to that mezzanine, and that mezzanine has stairs that go down to the Great Hall. In other words, everything is connected there.
Then, John Lithgow appears again, and he talks about reimagining the Harry Potter canon, giving it new life.
We can explore things that we know happen outside our direct view. In other words, it's a reinforcement of the fact that we'll have things that we don't see in the books, but that we know happen that are part of the canon. Exploring things that the books don't explore.
Like Dumbledore investigating the attempted theft of the stone, his relationship with Flamel, Hermione receiving her letter from Hogwarts, being visited by a professor, Ron receiving his letter from Hogwarts. Because we know that this happens. We just don't see it with our own eyes. Because the story's narrative follows Harry more. Harry's point of view, right? So, here's another confirmation of that, now endorsed by John Lithgow.
Now man, the next shot shows the sign for platform 9 3/4 and it's kinda greenish, you know? The numbers and letters are golden.
And one thing I liked is that it looks kinda dirty. Did you notice that, man? To me, that's very real. It makes it feel very real.
Because it's a platform, right? A train platform. And it really has that kind of dusty look, doesn't it?
Especially since it's a steam locomotive and a platform that's been there for years, right?
So it's cool that the platform sign isn't something brand new and pretty, but rather something more worn out, affected by time and dirt.
The platform clock shows exactly 11 o'clock, which is the departure time of the express. And then it changes to a scene where Dominique McLaughlin, who plays Harry, appears in character, right? As the character, there, with his cart, Hedwig's cage, and his little green backpack. And did you notice that on Harry's backpack there's a keychain with a globe on it? In other words, Harry Potter basically owns the world. He carries the world with him. Everyone knows who Harry Potter is. This boy is going to be famous, a legend. There won't be a single person in the world who doesn't know his name.
And that's very true. Of course, this connection between the keychain and Harry Potter, I just made that up.
Actually, I didn't make it up, it's just my perception. It might not be real, it might not be true. Maybe that's not the intention behind this little keychain. Sometimes it's just a keychain on his backpack.
But I'm a bit crazy. I like to find connections, and for me, that's how I interpreted it. It's okay if it's not.
And then, the next shot shows a part of the platform where there's a food court area.
There, right? Cafe and refreshments that I showed in the teaser analysis. That little sign there, right?
And you see that, man? It's cool because it's a platform. Even though it's a magical wizarding platform, wizards also eat. Wizards also have a snack there. I don't know if it's a coxinha and a soda, but they eat too.
That's cool because it brings more believability. You know, it gives a sense of reality, even though it's something from fantasy and all. Man, it makes sense to have a little snack bar there, right? And I can already imagine some parents hanging out together, like Hermione's parents with Arthur Weasley. You know, just talking about something, sharing experiences. Man, that's really cool. And you can see that the decoration, the atmosphere there is really vintage style.
Because wizards, they got stuck in time, my friend. They got stuck in time.
And that's a good thing, because their style is really cool. It's that older, more classic look, you know, with details. Something that didn't keep up with the modernization of the world. And that really shows in the atmosphere of this diner, right? Right next to the diner, there's the Lost and Found, right? Where people just go there to check if someone turned in the items they lost. And, man, you know who?
I can picture Neville there with his grandmother, Augusta, looking for Trevor, their toad. Honestly, I'd bet on it. We'll have a scene like that in the series because it's so Neville. And I'm not saying this because I saw anything during the set visit. I'm pretending I didn't. I didn't see anything.
But I would bet, man, I would bet that he could. Because that's just so him, you know? That's just so him.
So, it's also cool to have a Lost and Found there. I hope we get to see this Lost and Found in the series somehow. Right? That it's not just a background set there. I know it's real inside, because I saw it there. There are a lot of things on the set with lost animals and stuff. There's a Maguana there, really cool, but I hope it gets shown. They have to at least show Neville there, man. They have to show him. By the way, there's something cool about the snack bar on platform 9 3/4. I'm not sure I should say this, but I will. When I visited the series set, we had a snack there, though it wasn't made on site. It was a catering order and all. There were some bread rolls, some juices there and all, some coffee, and that's it. I was so amazed, I was so out of it that I didn't even eat. I just had a little piece. I held it for a long time while recording because I was really excited. It was so cool and symbolic to eat there. I can now say I've eaten at the platform 9 3/4 snack bar. Remember that when you watch the series, okay? Look, Kako ate here. That's cool, right? If not, that's fine, but I think it's cool. I can't help if you disagree. Another cool thing on the platform are these tiles. In this behind-the-scenes shot, you can see the tiles on the right side better. The tile has 2 white owls there on the left side. You can't really see it in this take, but in another take you can. They're 2 boars. You'll see. In the next one. In another take. You can see those boars better there. In the left corner, there's a little bench, and above that bench, there are some posters that are advertisements. They're actually advertisements for things from the wizarding world. You can't really see the posters clearly since they're out of focus, but they're ads. That also adds a sense of reality, right? Subways, trains, those kinds of things have advertisements. There's a snack bar, there's a lost and found. That's really cool. And look, once again, nature is showing up, right?
Besides on the tile, there are also leaves there and all, but on the iron structure, on the ceiling, there, coming out of the wall, there's also a flower inside the circle.
There, you can see that this nature thing is really present, even on the platform.
We have a moment where Mark Millard, who is the director of the first episodes, appears in action, and Adriano Goldman as well, who is the director of photography for the series.
By the way, Adriano is Brazilian. Big shout out to Adriano, too.
In this shot, you can see a crest on the Hogwarts Express. It's a bit out of focus, but that's the Hogsmeade crest. And on the train, it says London, Hogsmeade. Right, because those are the stops the train makes, right? It leaves London for Hogsmeade, then returns to London. In another scene, you see the camera operator and the assistant with the clapperboard.
And you can see the detail of the boar I mentioned on the tile. Look there, the boar is kind of golden, kind of yellowish, orangish. So, why the boar? Well, the boar is one of the symbols of Hogwarts.
In fact, at the entrance of the castle, there are 2 boar gargoyles there, right? Which are 2 winged boars, 2 winged pigs.
In this case, it's not exactly a boar, it's more like a hog. The name is Hog. Like, it's a boar. It's a wild pig there.
Hogwarts. The name Hogwarts is the combination of this pig with wart. Warts means wart, so the name Hogwarts literally means pigwort, pig, wart. Hogwarts is a really cool name, and the boar is there as the school's symbol. That's also the Hogwarts Express, which takes you to the school, right? I mean, to Hogsmeade, to get to the school, so it makes sense to have that boar there, right? On the clapperboard, we can see the director's name there, right?
Mark Millard as director, Adriano Goldman as director of photography. The filming date there, which is August 21st, 2025.
The big number 5, which is probably the number of times the scene was shot. In this case, they were shooting it for the 5th time, right? It was the 5th take of that same scene. The 100-227 could be scene number 102 and shot 27, right? Like, take 27. Shot in framing anyway. And that 008 down there, in the lower left corner, it could indicate the camera roll, even if they don't use film rolls anymore, right? With analog cameras, and it's more of a digital thing now, the term camera roll still exists, right?
Even if it's a memory card, if it's something digital anyway. And then, from this scene, we can more or less deduce that it would be around the 2nd episode.
That's because Mark Millard is there directing, and he's going to direct the first 2 episodes. He's going to direct the first 2 and the last 2.
If I'm not mistaken, the other 4 middle episodes have a different director. That's normal. Series often have multiple directors.
So, I don't think that's the first episode. Most likely it's the 2nd or maybe the 1st.
It probably ends with Hagrid arriving at the hut for the first time to rescue Harry, which is pretty much how that chapter ends in the book, right?
There are also carts visible behind the man with the clapperboard. You can see that there's a cart with a big gray trunk, a smaller brown suitcase on top, and a basket, which might be for carrying a kitten, right? Because at Hogwarts, first-year students can bring a toad, an owl, or a cat. And Ron doesn't care and brings a rat, because he's above the rules. No, just kidding. I don't think bringing those animals is required. It's just a suggestion. You can bring one of them, but can I bring a kangaroo too? Sure, that's fine. And you can see that back there, right? There's also a witch in purple robes. It looks like washed velvet. The name of that fabric is washed velvet. It looks like washed velvet.
There. She looks like an adult, and there's a child, definitely a younger person in front of her, probably her daughter, who's a student at Hogwarts.
A red outfit, and she's farther back, behind the assistant's hand and arm there by the clapperboard. And then, the next take shows the assembly crew there, with wooden structures. And, by the shape, to me, that's the Great Hall, okay? To me, that's definitely the Great Hall, just by the shape. It's very raw there, but I'm 100% sure it's the Great Hall. And then, the next scene shows the construction of the Diagon Alley set, still in the very early stages. There, everything is still basically just the structure. Many things lack finished facades, and some only have half a facade.
And you can see one of the Gringotts pillars. This pillar here, on the right side of the screen, is one of the Gringotts pillars. Anyway, it was still at a very early stage there, right?
And then, at this moment, the art director speaks, whose name is Mara.
She's the woman who appears, wearing glasses, showing the Hogwarts model. At this moment, when she's showing the Hogwarts model, you can actually see the part we saw in the teaser, with the students going in. Put them side by side.
So, to compare, Eric, that part with the walkway there is exactly the walkway where the Welcome First Years sign is, and you can see that the walkway leads straight to the Great Hall.
In that mezzanine area I mentioned before. Look, see how that corridor connects. Look at the model. See how the corridor connects there. You see, it's exactly that connection there, in the model.
In the background, there's an area I can't identify. Maybe a classroom or a hallway to another room.
You can't really see it clearly there, but I believe it could be something like a spell class or something like that. And then, behind her, behind Mara, while she's talking, you can also see there are some brooms, right? There are 4 types of brooms. 3 you can see very clearly, but 1 is behind her. You can't really see it well. But what you can see is that they have a very rustic look, a rustic design. There, they really look a lot like witch brooms. You know those brooms we see in stories, in visual materials, real witch brooms. You know, those very rustic brooms, with straw, the bristles kind of light-colored, right? Anyway, you can see that the handles are different. They have different designs, right? And the bristles, even though they're more rustic, they do have unique characteristics, right? Each one in its own way.
There, the way the bristles are attached, designed anyway, they have these differences. That's what changes from one model to another.
There on the left corner, you can see a stand with some. It looks like broom tips there, models of broom tips, you know?
And you can also see some broom concept art there on the table, quite close to the broom.
And then, on the right corner, back there, you can see what I initially thought were beater sticks, but when the camera zooms out a bit more, you can see they're actually broom bristles. So those are models there.
Because with these things, man, there's a lot of trial and error. They make several models, see how it turns out, you know, so that's what's there.
The next scene shows the actors Dominique and Alistair, who play Harry and Ron, respectively, getting on board the Hogwarts Express there, on one of the sets of the Hogwarts Express, to film the scene where they're going to Hogwarts for the first time. You can tell by their costumes, right?
It's very clear from the costume, because it's the same outfit as in the teaser scene. Anyway, you can see that Dominique has a hair clip in his hair, right?
I don't know if he uses that to make his hair look a bit styled, to keep it up there, because Harry's hair has that very distinctive feature of being all messy, kind of spiky. Anyway, I thought it was cool that he lets Alistair go in front, like he gives him a little pat on the back, really gentle. There. It's really nice, because obviously, we'll see this throughout the analysis.
Here, the kids are having fun, man, and we have to remember above all that they're kids, you know? Before we start talking about their appearance, making clueless comments, we have to remember that they're kids. You know, they're kids. I know these kids are really well protected there. They don't have access to social media or anything like that. But, come on, search your conscience.
When you're making a comment like, about a kid's teeth, you know, or any comment about a kid's appearance, man, that's not cool. It's not cool to do, you know? It's not cool.
And a really cool detail at this moment is that you can see that it's moving there, right? The set and all that.
It's a screen. It's a screen to simulate movement when they're inside the vehicle, so it looks like the vehicle is moving.
Of course, this is handled in post-production, right? It's not obvious and you can't even notice, but the technique they use is really cool too.
And once again, I want to emphasize how important it is to use practical effects in the series. That's really cool.
And then, after that, we have a scene with the trio playing rock, paper, scissors backstage, right? They're just kids having fun, man. And those outfits they're wearing, to me, that's characterization. You know, it's from some moment when they don't need to wear the uniform there at Hogwarts. Maybe, I don't know, at some point. I'm not going to guess the moment here or anything like that.
For me, Arabella's outfit is a costume. Ron's is definitely a costume too, since he also wears that plaid shirt as part of it.
Dominique's clothes are looser there and all, and he's wearing glasses, so it's a costume, you know? Those aren't their personal clothes, because there's a moment in the teaser where they show up in their own clothes, and they're really different. And there, you can see that Hermione's clothes, her Muggle outfit, are really characteristic of the 90s man. That patterned, colorful shirt, that's so 90s man. There were shirts like that, called fleece sweaters, I don't know if you remember, but they were really warm. They always had those really bold patterns, you know? Really colorful, full of shapes and all that. I had one and I hated it. I hated it when my mom made me wear those shirts. I wanted to jump off a bridge. It was horrible. You can also see that it's not the train outfit. It's because Ron is wearing a different shirt underneath. He's wearing a green shirt, not the Chudley Cannon shirt.
And Harry is wearing a shirt, not that sweatshirt he wears in the train scene, right? The Express, while these scenes are playing, right? Mar, who's the art director, says that making sets of that scale, that's a designer's dream, right? The dream of anyone who works with this.
And that they're embracing the joyful, playful spirit of being a magical child in the series.
And then, the next take shows another set under construction, this one a bit more advanced than Diagon Alley was, with part of the finishing already in place. And this is probably some courtyard at Hogwarts, some external courtyard at Hogwarts, right? Judging by its structure and appearance.
A guy from the production team comes in, and I have no idea who he is since he shows up without a name. He says that with the magnitude of everything there, it's easy to get lost. It's huge. And he gets goosebumps, right? I'm not sure if he's the one talking. Get lost, literally, because it's so big, you can actually get lost there, or get lost in your thoughts, because everything is so grand that it's easy to lose yourself in your ideas. I don't know, how did you interpret it? It could be both. And then, going to the next shot, it shows that part of Hogwarts where the students first arrive, right? Which is the entrance hall. And then, the chandeliers hanging with candles, torches scattered around, some portraits and tapestries spread out as well, which unfortunately you can't see clearly. And here, in this environment, there really isn't much to say, besides what I've already mentioned in the teaser analysis, right? Because it's the same environment, there are two women there, likely from the production team. They're not in costume or anything, they're just showing this environment behind the scenes.
You can see there, I think what's interesting to mention is that you can tell the ceiling is clearly part of the studio set, right? You can see it, it's not something fully built.
A complete castle interior, but only up to a certain height.
And then you can see that central lighting there. And that lighting is using a trick there. A light diffusion device called a honeycomb. This honeycomb makes the light not spread. It doesn't let the light get too harsh, right? When we talk about harsh light, it's a light that's going straight, really strong and all, you know?
And the diffusion is exactly to make this light softer. To illuminate, of course, but to make it softer.
And the honeycomb is exactly to keep the light from spreading to the sides, so the light stays focused where it needs to be. You know, so it doesn't reflect on things it shouldn't reflect on.
I learned this from Boo Boo from Session Reservada, our buddy from Session Reservada. Because we record with a honeycomb, the lighting has a honeycomb like this. Obviously much smaller, right? And then, I asked him about it that day. He explained it to me. Anyway, this was pretty recent because it changed not too long ago, right? And then, it's really cool to know these details, right? About audiovisual, production, and behind the scenes. And then, in the next scene, which shows Minerva entering the Great Hall, that's when you can really see a lot. We're seeing the Great Hall there for the first time, right? You can see that the tables have some kind of lamp along their entire length. Adriano Goldman really likes to use this kind of lighting in cinematography. You know, he composes the scenes really well with these lights in the environment. And then, at the entrance to the Great Hall, you can see the house mascots, at least for Hufflepuff and Gryffindor. There on the right side, first the badger, then the lion, and probably on the other side of the door, there's the eagle and the snake for Ravenclaw and Slytherin. You can see the door is definitely very golden, unlike the entrance door to the hall. And then, sitting at the table, you can see Oliver Wood, who is the captain of the Gryffindor Quidditch team. He's the student in the middle, between the girl on the left and the boy on the right in the aisle where Minerva will walk by. And then, at the table on this end, you can see that there's a couple at the end, a boy and a girl talking very close to each other. It looks like they're dating.
Back behind Minerva, she hasn't gone in yet. You can see it clearly. At the top of her hat in the back.
You can see a tapestry that seems to have a tree on it, another tree showing up there in the teaser, right? And you can see that it's a tapestry depicting some kind of setting.
It looks like there's a witch and a wizard there. You can't see it very well, but it seems like there's a man and a woman there.
And there's definitely a tree in the right corner. There's a tree, and it looks like there's a man and a woman. It seems like behind Minerva, right behind her is Ron. It goes by really quickly there. And then there's a shot where the actress Janet McTeer, who plays Minerva McGonagall, comes in, and she says the following. The first time you're in the Great Hall, you think, wow.
And then there's a cut to the scene in the hall where, once again, you can see a lot of detail. Sitting at the Gryffindor table are Seamus, Ron, Hermione, Lavender, and Abraham.
And then, in front of them are Dean Thomas, Neville Longbottom, Harry Potter, and Parvati Patil. And then there are 3 boys there, apparently extras, because in Gryffindor, in the first year, only Dean, Harry, Seamus, Neville, and Ron join, 5 students. And for the girls, as we know, it's Hermione, Lavender, Parvati. So there should be 2 others there, but there aren't, right? It's not a rule that 5 should join. But anyway, and then there's a girl who looks like a first year there, kind of as an extra. And there are 3 boys who also seem to be first years and are extras there. So, like, I don't know if they're first years, if they're second years, but apparently they seem to be first years. Also, at the other table, behind Harry sits Draco Malfoy, next to Crabbe and Goyle. You can also see this at the door of the Great Hall. When the camera moves a little to the side, you can see that up high there are the house banners on the left side. There, you can see the banner for both Ravenclaw and Slytherin. And they have different shapes, right? They don't just have different colors, but different shapes as well, and they have a very, very medieval banner aesthetic. Very medieval. Likely on the other side, to the right, are Hufflepuff and Gryffindor banners that didn't appear. Check out that cool detail. You can see that above the door to the Great Hall, there are the Hogwarts hourglasses. The house hourglasses that keep track of the points, they're right there above the door. The hourglasses are in different places. In the Harry Potter productions, right? In the movies, they're behind the teacher's table. In the books, they're in the Great Hall, right there. But I don't remember exactly where they are. I need to reread that part of the book, because honestly, I forgot exactly where they are. But in the game Hogwarts Legacy, for example, they're before you enter the Great Hall, in the antechamber of the Great Hall, so they have different places. Then in the series, the creative choice was to put them right above the door to the Great Hall. There, on the wall, you can see them. You can see a little bit of them there. You can tell they're the hourglasses by their colors. And then a card pops up in the middle of the teaser with a text guided by the artists who bring it to life, showing the Hogwarts Express in motion. On the platform, there are several carts with trunks. It shows the number 5,977 on the train, right? In the movie, it's number 5,972. Movies and series are different, of course. I'm only mentioning the Express's number because people said I skipped it in the teaser analysis, but I already covered it in the set visit video. It was the first thing I mentioned about the Express. I noted, look, the train's number changed, but left it out of the analysis since I felt it was sufficient. The train's number is 5,977. And then, Papa Esciedo comes in, the actor who plays Severus Snape in the Harry Potter series. And then, he says the following: just by getting there and seeing the train in person, you really imagine yourself at Hogwarts. It's truly an amazing feeling. Guys, I don't want to sound arrogant or anything like that. Oh, he's going to keep talking about how he went on the set visit, but it's because it's totally related, right? So, it's really an amazing feeling. Well, you saw it on the set visit. When the train moved, I went crazy. I even shouted, "I'm finally going to Hogwarts." That's really the feeling. And then, the next scene shows the students in class. And of course, that's not the final scene, right? You can see there are a lot of crew members there. Dominique is there, in the back, among the guys talking. Alistair, who plays Ron, is there in the right corner, and Arabella is practicing what looks like the movement of the spell, while the actress who plays Parvati and the actor who plays Neville are playing around with spells, you know, with each other.
And here, in this scene, there's something really interesting I wanted to talk about, right? Really, really interesting. You can see the movement Arabella is making.
She makes a motion there, moves her hand, and does a complex wand movement. Even that, to me, is really cool because, man, it feels like Hogwarts. I've even said this before, right? I'm not comparing it to the movie in a negative way or saying the movie is bad or anything like that. After all, man, it's very clear that I'm passionate about the movies, right? I have several videos here talking about things that are better in the movies, right? People often take things out of context and assume I'm criticizing the movies because there's a series. No, I've always spoken honestly. If I need to criticize, I do. And if I like something, I say so. That's it. So, like, I'm passionate about the movies. But one thing, an impression that the movies give, is that Hogwarts isn't really a school. You know? They have very few classes. It's just a class or two that shows up here and there, of course, because of time constraints. And the spells seem to be simpler, you know? Like, you wave the wand, say it, and the spell works. Only in the first movie do they have that swish and flick with Wingardium Leviosa, and that's it for the whole series. It looks like we'll have to do complex movements to cast spells. That makes total sense, because man, we're talking about a school, and the students are there to learn. Learning to control magic, learning to use spells, learning to handle the wand, so it makes sense that the spells have a movement, you know? And the spell movement thing also comes a lot from the Harry Potter games. In the games, there's a lot of spell movement, right?
Almost every spell has a movement. You need to master it first and then cast the spell. You know, that's really cool.
And in this class, I believe it's the Charms class, where they're going to do Wingardium Leviosa. And you can see in the classroom that they're in the same place as that photo of Hermione that came out. And then I even mentioned in that photo of Hermione that I thought it was the Transfiguration class, where she gets a compliment from Minerva and she's all happy. But no, now I think, seeing this behind-the-scenes scene, I think it's Flitwick's classroom. And when she manages to make the feather levitate, that's why she's so happy. You can even see Ron and Harry's position in the photo. They're further back, like that. And in the behind-the-scenes video, they're exactly there, matching the position they're in the photo. So, for me, this is the Wingardium Leviosa scene.
The room is the same. You can tell by the paintings. You can see the greenish tabletop. You can see the inkwell with the feather. There, the case that's on the table is the same. Actually, the same case right there.
There's a quill, there's a pencil, there's everything you need for a class, to write, and so on. And you also remember that there was leaked footage of the wizard on the roof, the recording of the wizard on the roof, where he made a movement to cast the spell. You remember that? So here it shows Hermione also making a movement. I think all the spells will really have these movements. You know, it'll be something more complex. That's really cool. It gives a more theatrical, more magical feel to it. You can also see some details on the wands, like Hermione's, which has a unique design. A little detail there. That goes up, wrapping around the wand, which reminded me of something like a leaf, like a plant. It ends up looking like her movie wand, the design from the films, maybe as a tribute. And Neville's wand. Man, I'm just fascinated by this wand that looks like a stick, dude. You know why?
The wands I think are the coolest are the ones that are really rustic like this, and that look like a stick. In fact, the wand I think is the coolest in the movies, or at least one of the coolest, right? Because, well, I also like the more detailed wands, but one wand I think is really cool is Grindelwald's.
Before he had the Elder Wand in the movies, which is a wand that's all kind of twisted like this.
And it has thorns. You know, it really looks like a branch from a plant that has thorns. You know, it's really cool.
So, Neville's wand is kind of in that style, and at the tip, it has a little branch sticking up, man. I thought it was really cool. And remember, this wand used to belong to Frank Longbottom, okay? Because Neville inherits his father's wand there, and he only gets his own later, in the 5th year, after the battle at the department, when his father's wand gets broken, right? Anyway, Parvati's wand. You can see that it's also a little crooked, but it's not as rustic as Neville's. It's not as rustic. It's a little crooked, but it's a bit more detailed. You can see that it looks more varnished, it seems, while Neville's is really rustic.
The uniforms. In this scene, I won't say much since I've already discussed them in the series teaser analysis and made a video about the uniforms, so there's nothing more to add.
The next scene shows an explosion of papers. And that's in a department there, you know? It's not even a set or anything, it's a department, most likely for practical effects. Right there, showing what will be used to throw the letters at the Dursleys' house on Privet Drive, right? You can see the papers are even blank. They're not the letters yet. And this seems to be from the day the trio took the photo for the announcement, right? Because Alistair is wearing the beige outfit, just like he is in the photo, and Dominique is wearing a gray shirt, right? Which is different. Maybe he changed shirts for the photo. And Arabella is wearing a denim jacket, and she's not wearing a jacket in the photo, right? The one that was announced, she's wearing a kind of floral t-shirt, but she's wearing jeans. The trio is watching there, right? Watching the explosion of letters. Behind them is Francesca Garner, the one who's laughing in a brown jacket. She's the writer and showrunner of the series, right? Award-winning Francesca Garner. And then, man, you can see there's a chessboard in front of them, but it's not wizard's chess. It's not the chess from the series.
Maybe they were just playing there, or maybe learning something, or another, I don't know. Maybe they were just demonstrating something. But there, they're not in costume. You can really tell they're not in costume.
None of them. Dominique isn't even wearing glasses, so they're just there in the setting.
Now, the next scene shows the students walking through the forest, which is probably the scene where they're going to the little boat, right? And there's really not much to say here.
Except for their tie, which is a burgundy tie, kind of leaning towards purple, which is the tie they wear before being admitted to Hogwarts, right?
After all, when they're sorted, they wear their house ties with the respective house colors.
And so, that tie is from when they're just arriving, right? It has the little Hogwarts emblem on it. It's a burgundy color, kind of purple. Locks Pratt stands out there because of his height, right? He's clearly taller. I've already mentioned his height. so no need to revisit that. And you can see that the students are holding a little metal rod in their hands, which probably fits into that snack bar inside. But the one from this first boy here is detached. I don't know why. The next scene shows, once again, the students in the Great Hall. There's Arabella there, right? Who plays Hermione, and the actor who plays Seamus as well, and Holly Weddington, who is the Oscar-winning costume designer. She's the costume designer for the series, right? She's there talking to the kids, kind of adjusting the costumes, and Hermione is wearing a ribbon that looks kind of bluish on her head. There, you can tell it's before the sorting by their clothes. They're wearing the burgundy tie. And then, man, back there in this scene, honestly, I was surprised by my eagle eye. I really was. You can see Professor Flitwick, man, wearing blue clothes way in the back, really out of focus at the teacher's table. Look, that's Professor Flitwick. Man, because he's the only one who's shorter, right, compared to the others. And by his height, you can tell it's him. There again, the art director shows up saying it's like a colossal playground. That's really amazing, right? The model, the sets, everything, and it must be really amazing to work with that. Then, it shows a scene with an animatronic Hagrid mask, and this mask goes on Hagrid's body double. Because, man, every scene with Hagrid is basically filmed twice. Everything related to Hagrid has two differently sized versions because there's the Nick Frost version and the body double version.
And to give the impression that Hagrid is really a half-giant.
There are two cakes, for example. The birthday cake he gives to Harry. There's the cake that goes in Hagrid's hand, which is smaller, to make it look, you know? It gives the impression that he's really big, and the cake is small. And the cake that goes in Harry's hand, for example, is bigger. It's the normal size of a cake, so it makes the size look really different, you know? So, Hagrid's scenes are filmed twice. There's the body double, who has this animatronic mask for the wider shots. Anyway, that's really cool. And then, the next scene also shows another animatronic. It looks like a creature, right?
Obviously, it's a creature there, but it's a creature that's just the skeleton, so you can't tell which creature it is by the shape of the body.
I imagine it could be a fire crab because of the shell. The back has a shell-like shape there. The face looks similar to the fire crab. Anyway, there's a tail there and all. The fire crab doesn't have such a long tail. But, you know, it's an adaptation, keeping in mind that they may end up doing it in whatever creative way they choose. It doesn't have such a long tail. It has a tail, but it's not that long. Not that I remember. And then, man, something showed up that made me really happy and impressed, which was this animatronic owl. I'm going to replay this whole video. I'm passionate about behind-the-scenes stuff. I'm literally really passionate, and seeing these things is amazing to me. You know how there are so many people behind it? That's why it annoys me when people say, they're going to cancel the Harry Potter series. Just look at how many people are behind it. Look at how many people are working on this, man. Look at how many people are working on this, you know? There are literally hundreds and hundreds of people, maybe even thousands of people, you know? It's really unfair. So, like, I'm passionate about behind-the-scenes stuff. I really am. It's so cool to see the owl there. Look at the realism of this animatronic owl, you know, man. There are scenes where they use real animals, but there are scenes where it's impossible. There's no way, so they end up using animatronics instead. It's amazing to see how realistic this is, and how much technology has advanced to make something like this possible. And then, right? Mara's voice comes in saying, we're expanding even more, surpassing what the audience already knows. Once again, reinforcing that. That's when they're going beyond, and man, just think about it. They say that, right? That we're going beyond. We're doing more than what the audience knows, because for them, it's much harder than starting from scratch, like the movies did, because there's all this pressure, right? To adapt a story that's already been adapted for the screen, right? Namely the movies, which were hugely successful, that even today, everyone loves, right? So, it's a tough mission that they have to, at the same time, make it original, but not do it in a way that seems like they're copying everything from the movie, you know? I think it's much more challenging. Anyway, they need to be really original in what they're doing. Really, really brilliant. And then, Mara and Mark Millard show up, right? Looking at a camera, looking at a screen, probably at something, some result of something they did that turned out really cool. And then, it shows a camera like this, right? With some backlighting and all that. And then it goes to a shot there, which for me was the highlight of the teaser, the shots of the finished Diagon Alley. There are very few scenes, but there's a lot to talk about. This first moment that it shows, Diagon Alley, there's a side street on the right called Adeline's Close, which is an alley that branches off Diagon Alley.
It's not just one street, it has side streets, right? So there's an alley there. This aligns close, and inside this alley, you can see that there are several papers stuck to the wall, right?
Things like that, like those posters that you stick on the wall, with ads and stuff anyway.
And then, there's a little stand with products there, because, man, Diagon Alley has people selling everything. There are people who have shops, but there are also those street vendors. You know? That's really cool. And then, next to that alley, there's a magical plant shop called Airbed and Seed. And in that shop, man, there are a lot of cool details there. They look like mushrooms and stuff. It even reminded me of the Talit, that magical mushroom-like creature often used in potion making.
Above the door of this shop, there's a statue that looks like a bird, but I couldn't figure out which bird it is.
And then, on the left side, right next to the shop, next to this magical plant shop, there's the Owl Emporium. You can tell by the owl drawings there and the various cages. And when there's a scene that shows the counter up close, where you can see the mushrooms and all, you can see a bit of the name on the sign there, Owl Emporium, but in the original language, right? It's in that owl shop that Hagrid buys Hedwig for Harry, man. So we'll probably see Hagrid in that shop, you know, right? The next scene shows countless extras arriving there in Diagon Alley. It's probably their first time going in there, right?
After they're in costume, but the production wanted to capture their reaction there. And you can see that their clothes are really cool, really colorful.
Unfortunately, you can only really see the outfit of the first one there because it cuts right away, right? The others are standing one behind the other. You can't really see the clothes in detail, but you can tell they're very colorful, really different. And then, when they're walking, the store that's on their right is Flourish and Blots. You know? The Flourish and Blots bookstore? You can see the sign on the columns, green there with part of the name, Flourish and Blots, which is the name of the bookstore in English. You can see it there. And then, the scene changes and it shows some pages on the ceiling, spinning like that. Those pages are at Flourish and Blots. They're spinning.
They're likely adding a special effect there, right? There's the practical effect, but they'll add a special effect of the pages spinning. Something lively.
Diagon Alley has that same lively feel too, you know? Everything is moving. That's really cool. And these pages have a really cool Easter egg, man. Really cool. I don't know if you noticed, but these pages are from the Tales of Beetle the Bard, specifically. This page is from The Wizard and the Hopping Pot. You can see its drawing here. Check out this cool Easter egg from the Tales of Beetle the Bard. It's only introduced in the story in the 7th book, you know? But since it's a famous tale for wizard children, it makes a lot of sense for it to be there in the bookstore. You know, we just don't know it, let's say. Harry doesn't know it, Hermione didn't know it, right? She learns about it when Dumbledore leaves it for her. And Ron, he knew, but Ron isn't very interested in books, so it makes sense for it to be there, right? And then you can see behind the extras there, still going back a bit to the scene, that they're coming, right? That they're passing by the blurry forest. In the back, you can see Gringotts Bank. You can see those columns. It's a bit out of focus, but that's Gringotts Bank. In the scene where we're seeing the pages, there on the ceiling are the Tales of Beetle the Bard.
On the right corner, you can see the front of a golden shop that says Quill, Quill. Quill means feather, right? It's probably a quill shop.
It could be Scribulus, where Hermione buys ink, inkwells, and quills, or it could be Manuense Squill, which is a shop there in Diagon Alley.
And then, in the next shot, it shows Snape's potions classroom.
It's definitely the potions classroom, full of cauldrons, full of vials, ingredients on the wall. Anyway, you can see a bunch of mortars there, right? That they use to grind the ingredients, right?
And you can see the books open there, open to the preparation instructions. Did you notice that only the book in the middle is on a different page? To me, that's the book where Neville will be positioned. It's Neville's book, and he's the one who makes the wrong potion and spills it and ends up covered in boils.
In Snape's first class, Snape takes points from Harry, saying that he didn't want to help Neville and so on.
Anyway, I think that's where Harry, Neville, and maybe Ron will be sitting. Or maybe Seamus nearby, because in the book, it's Seamus who's close, right? Anyway, let's see.
The room is really dark, right? Lit by candles there. But man, it's a dungeon. It's really dark. And then, the next scenes show some actors being made up for their roles, like John Lithgow as Dumbledore, there in makeup, right? Giving a smile. There's Arabella Stanton as Hermione, waving, all happy. She's wearing a little colorful wristwatch. Look, they're kids. You know, man, they're kids. They're little kids. Man, don't talk about the kid's appearance. Look at her little watch. All colorful there, man. Anyway, you can see that at this moment when Arabella appears there, it's from a scene. She hasn't been picked for the costume yet, right? but I thought it was really cute how she waved.
The next take shows Dominique and Alistair laughing backstage, right?
Wearing the uniforms, and they've already been sorted, you can see they're wearing the clothes, with Gryffindor colors. And they're in an outdoor area of Hogwarts there, in an outside courtyard.
Notice the window in the back, that window way in the background. There also seems to be some kind of tree, a plant growing by the window.
So, another cool detail there, with plants and nature growing around the castle. Then, it shows Dominique getting dressed in the school uniform.
Muggle, right? From the scene we saw in the teaser. There, which is the St. Gregory uniform. And then the express train quickly appears in motion.
And then, an iron arch, which is exactly the entrance to platform 9 3/4 according to the book, right? Even though you go through the wall there at platform 9 3/4 to get to King's Cross, to get to the platform. When they go through, there's a whole wrought iron arch there, that's the one. And then, the teaser ends with John Lithgow speaking. We wait an eternity to do something that moves people. Because obviously, he knows the weight that Harry Potter has for us, the fans, how this magic is important to us, in our lives, and how it moves us. You know, so he knows the weight of it. And that's why I'm really liking him. As Dumbledore, I think he's going to be an incredible Dumbledore, and I hope he has longevity, so he can keep playing Dumbledore until the end of the series. And then, he shows up, right? The text, Searching for Harry, the art behind the magic, premieres April 5th on HBO Max.
Ah, my friend. So, if your Christmas was reserved for Harry Potter, then your Easter will be too. And look, it's even worse for me, because there's a barbecue at my place. Well, not at my place, right? At the building's barbecue area.
I told my family, let's have a barbecue at Easter. What Harry Potter release could possibly come out at Easter? Nothing. Let's just do it. Now, I'm not even going to take part in the barbecue I organized, because I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to want to watch this. Watch it with my family. Because they act just like a bunch of baboons. Screaming baboons. Silly. Babbling in a group. I can't watch it closely now, but I want to so I can create content. They'll stay at the barbecue. Too bad for them. While I'll be here working. Good for us. But since the documentary will come out at 4 in the afternoon, I can grab a little barbecue, right? Around lunchtime. Be all set. Then go up to get ready and do this work. I'm really looking forward to it. There's not much time left. I don't know if this video is coming out today. On Thursday, April 2nd, which, by the way, is the 11th anniversary. 11 years since the first video I recorded here for Calderon Furado, huh? 11 years. 11 years, my friend. 11 years. With a channel solely and exclusively dedicated to Harry Potter, with weekly videos. 11 years, 11 years. Congratulations, I didn't even remember. Did you know it was my anniversary today, Calderon?
I got a really beautiful video from my English teacher here, Katya, from her and her students at the school where she teaches.
They made a letter for Calderon Furado, a Hogwarts letter, since Calderon is turning 11, so he got the Hogwarts letter. It was really cute, the students reading it. Obviously, I'm not going to post it because, you know, I want to protect the children's privacy. They're kids, so of course I won't put their faces on the internet. But I really appreciate the affection. Thank you, Katya. Thank you to everyone at the school. A big hug, and thanks for the affection. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this analysis. It wasn't like the teaser one, which ended up being over an hour, right? But that's it. We work with what we have. If I missed anything, I tried to do it as quickly as possible, so you could watch it today. Alright, even though I did it with a lot of care and meticulousness, like I always do. Wait. I forgot to analyze the photo. I finished the video and forgot to analyze the photo. A photo also came out, which is the cover photo of the documentary. And I need to talk about it, but this will be quick. You can see that in the photo there are several Kianas. Look, Harry is here, with the Quidditch uniform. Fred or George is holding him like this. This is after his victory in the match, right? There's a Ravenclaw student there. You can see the scarf. There's a Gryffindor student, Hermione, with a purple beanie there, Ron, with red cheeks because of the cold, right? And the little Gryffindor scarf? It's not real cold, just simulated. But the boy, being a redhead, needs to look red in winter, so that's what they do. Dominique is also all red, because apparently, he was playing a sport there, Quidditch. And you can see in the image the tip of the Nimbus 2000 which hadn't been shown before. Look how beautiful it is, man. It has a golden detail. A ring like this at the tip, gold with red. And the top part has this red metal detail, with Nimbus 2000 written in gold. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I know there were people who didn't like the Nimbus 2000, but I liked it and don't care if you didn't. I'm kidding if you didn't like it, that's your right. It's that simple, but I liked it, because for me, it reminds me, I already said this, right? It reminds me of the illustrations from before the movies, which, for me, are wonderful and fill my heart with affection. So, I really like this Nimbus design here. Of course, man, I'm not going to keep comparing it to the movie. Oh, but in the movie it was like this, because the movie is the movie, you know? I think the worst enemy of all fans is making these comparisons, because then you won't be able to enjoy anything. You'll just stay stuck.
Oh, but in the movie it was better. You might think it was better in the movie.
Of course you can, that's fine, but always bringing up the comparison, in a negative way, I think it keeps you from enjoying things. Anyway, that's it. I analyzed the photo.
Look at the kids with painted faces over there, cheering for Gryffindor. What a beautiful thing. Look at that. Oh, special. April 5th, HBO Max. I'm going to go crazy, guys. Yeah, I'm going to go crazy. I'll see you in the next episode of Calderon Furado, and until then, mischief managed.